Havenwood, Vermont. For most of the year, it was a postcard come to life. Quaint covered bridges, church steeples piercing crisp autumn skies, and a community so tight-knit, everyone genuinely knew their neighbor. It was the kind of place where front doors stayed unlocked and gossip traveled faster than the morning fog. But beneath that picturesque veneer, a sinister undercurrent of old secrets and unspoken rivalries ran deep, like hidden veins of granite. And in the late summer of 2007, those buried truths began to surface, not with a bang, but with a whisper, delivered in the most unsettling way imaginable. The first letter arrived on the polished mahogany desk of Arthur Finch, the beloved principal of Havenwood High School. Arthur was a pillar of the community, respected by parents, adored by students, and a beacon of integrity, or so everyone thought. The letter itself was a grotesque collage of cut-out words from old newspapers, meticulously glued onto a stark white sheet. It read, "Arthur Finch, you can't hide the money. The PTA funds are gone. We know what you did in '98. Arthur, a man who rarely showed anything but calm composure, turned ashen. He crumpled the note, dismissing it as a cruel prank. But the words gnawed at him. In 1998, a minor financial oversight with a school fundraising campaign had been quietly swept under the rug, a mistake only a handful of people in the school board truly knew about. How could a random prankster know such a granular detail? That same week, similar unsettling messages began to appear. Not just in mailboxes, but tucked under car windshield wipers in the grocery store parking lot, taped to front doors in the dead of night, or even left inside unlocked garages. The targets varied, but the pattern was chillingly consistent. Each letter meticulously exposed a deep, personal transgression, a dark secret carefully guarded for years. Eleanor Vance, the town's ostensibly perfect pastor, found a letter in her hymn book that referenced a scandalous affair from her college days, a secret she'd carried in silent shame for decades. Officer Ben Harrison, a local cop with a spotless record, received one detailing a questionable off-duty incident from his rookie years that was dismissed internally. The letters weren't just accusations, they were surgical strikes against the very foundations of Havenwood's most respected citizens. Panic, initially a low hum, began to crescendo. The anonymity of the letters was their cruelest weapon. Who could be doing this? It couldn't be just one person, could it? The sender seemed to possess an almost omniscient knowledge of everyone's past, every hidden misstep, every whispered sin. Neighbors, who had once shared garden vegetables and weekend barbecues, began to eye each other with suspicion. Every friendly smile felt like a mask, every casual conversation a potential trap. The town's small police force, led by the aging but earnest Chief Thompson, was baffled. They tried everything: stakeouts, marked envelopes, forensic analysis of the paper scraps, which led nowhere. Each attempt to trap the writer failed spectacularly, almost as if the letter writer knew their every move, anticipating their actions before they even took them. It was as if they were chasing a ghost. The letters themselves became more aggressive, no longer just exposing secrets, but subtly threatening consequences. Confess your sins or pay the price, one chilling read. The truth will find you, and it won't be kind. The veneer of quaint Havenwood was cracking, exposing the rot underneath. The community was no longer safe. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and the unseen hand holding the matches was meticulously cutting out its next words, patiently watching its targets unravel. The first whisper had been heard, and its chilling echo would soon transform Havenwood into a living nightmare. The initial disbelief in Havenwood quickly curdled into a simmering dread. Arthur Finch's silent shame about the PTA funds, Eleanor Vance's carefully buried past, these were just the tremors before the earthquake. The anonymous letters, once a horrifying anomaly, became a daily terror, a constant, chilling reminder that someone knew everything. The writer, whom the terrified townsfolk secretly began to call the Whisperer, seemed to delight in torment. The targets weren't just prominent figures anymore. The letters spread like a virus, infecting the lives of seemingly ordinary residents. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Gable, found a meticulously crafted note slipped into her beloved copy of Moby Dick, detailing a petty shoplifting incident from her youth, something no one alive should have remembered. Young Mark Peterson, the star quarterback, received one exposing his desperate steroid use. Each revelation was a calculated strike, designed to isolate, humiliate, and fracture trust. The delivery methods became bolder, more invasive. Letters appeared on bedside tables, tucked into lunchboxes in school cafeterias, even pinned to laundry lines in backyards. It was as if the whisperer was a phantom, moving through Havenwood's homes and lives with impunity. The thought that their friends, their family, their neighbors could be the one leaving these vile notes became a constant, suffocating fear. Every casual glance held suspicion. Every quiet conversation felt like it was being overheard. The content of the letters also took a darker turn. They weren't just exposing secrets, they were actively demanding actions, subtly threatening consequences if their sinister directives weren't followed. One letter, sent to Dr. Lena Sharma, Havenwood's respected pediatrician, accused her of medical malpractice in a long-ago case. It demanded she publicly apologize to the deceased patient's family by the upcoming town hall meeting, or her true sins would spill into the streets. Dr. Sharma, a woman of impeccable integrity, became a shell of herself, her usually calm demeanor replaced by twitching eyes and a constant nervous habit of looking over her shoulder. Chief Thompson and his small police force were overwhelmed. They established a tip line, which quickly became flooded with paranoid accusations and wild theories, each pointing fingers at innocent residents. They set up surveillance, trying to catch anyone slipping a letter. Officer Ben Harrison, still reeling from his own anonymous accusation, led a stakeout near the town's main post office, watching for anyone behaving suspiciously. For 3 nights, nothing. Then, on the 4th night, he found a letter taped to his own patrol car windshield, mocking him. "You're looking in the wrong places, officer. Some secrets aren't sent through the mail." The message was clear. The whisperer was always one step ahead. It was an unseen hand, pulling strings, playing a sick game with the town's sanity. The terror wasn't just about the secrets being exposed. It was the chilling realization that this entity, whatever it was utterly untouchable. It moved unseen, knew thoughts unspoken, and manipulated lives with ruthless efficiency. The social fabric of Havenwood began to fray. Friendships dissolved, marriages strained, and quiet desperation turned into open hostility. Town meetings, once forums for community spirit, devolved into shouting matches, residents openly accusing each other, tearing apart decades of shared history. The air was thick with mistrust, fear, and a pervasive sense that they were all trapped in a cage, being watched, and slowly, systematically, driven to the brink. Havenwood, once a symbol of idyllic small-town life, was now a pressure cooker of paranoia, its residents waiting for the next whisper, the next devastating revelation, knowing that this unseen terror was just beginning to truly tighten its grip. The paranoia in Havenwood had become a tangible thing, a suffocating blanket woven from suspicion and fear. Every whisper, every hushed conversation, felt like a judgment. The town, once a picture of communal bliss, was now a fractured collection of terrified individuals, each waiting for their own secret to be exposed, or worse, for the whisperer's threats to become reality. And reality, it turned out, was far more brutal than any of them could have imagined. The next target was Coach David Miller. David was a local legend, a beloved figure who had coached generations of Havenwood High's football teams to victory. He was a widower, devoted to his 2 grown children, and seemingly without a dark spot on his record. Beneath that veneer, however, David carried a crippling secret, a gambling addiction that had nearly cost him everything years ago, a debt quietly paid off by a deceased relative, and a shame he buried deep. His letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, taped to the door of the empty high school gym. It was different from the others, more direct, more menacing. "David Miller, your bookie debts aren't paid. The widow's money is coming out. Deadline, this Friday. The Overlook." The last 2 words, "the Overlook," sent a shiver down David's spine. It referred to Miller's Peak Overlook, a treacherous, rocky cliff face known for its breathtaking views and deadly, unguarded drops. It was a place only the most experienced hikers dared to visit. David spent the next few days in a daze, his legendary composure completely shattered. He knew the gambling debt was a deeply buried secret, tied to a loan shark operation miles away. No one in Havenwood should have known. This wasn't just a threat of exposure, it felt like a death sentence. He made frantic phone calls, looked constantly over his shoulder, and refused to leave his house. Friday dawned, cold and drizzly. By noon, David Miller was gone. His truck was found abandoned at the base of the Miller's Peak Trail. Chief Thompson immediately organized a search party, a grim sense of foreboding hanging over them. By late afternoon, they found him. Coach Miller was found at the very edge of the overlook, sprawled grotesquely at the base of a jagged rock formation, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. It was clear he had fallen, or been pushed from a dizzying height. His broken neck, his shattered bones, spoke of a violent, abrupt end. But it was the details surrounding his death that chilled the blood of even the most seasoned officers. There were faint, disturbing scuff marks near the cliff edge, not consistent with a simple slip. They suggested a struggle, or perhaps a deliberate, precise push. More chillingly, the ground around the impact site was unusually churned, as if something heavy had been dragged or had thrashed violently before impact. And then there was the clue clutched in his dead, frozen hand. It was a crumpled piece of paper, soaked with rain and David's own blood. Chief Thompson carefully pried it open. It was a fragment of the very letter David had received, a part containing the chilling phrase, "Deadline, this Friday, the Overlook." The cut-out words were still perfectly legible, pristine even amidst the gore. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a direct, horrifying link. The Whisperer had not just exposed David's secret, it had seemingly orchestrated his demise. The news of Coach Miller's death, undeniably tied to the anonymous letters, shattered Havenwood's already fragile peace. Paranoia erupted into open hysteria. Accusations flew freely. Neighbors pointed fingers at neighbors, desperate to find a culprit, any culprit, for the unseen terror gripping their town. The idyllic facade of Havenwood didn't just crack, it imploded. Everyone was a suspect, everyone was a potential victim. Chief Thompson, usually so steadfast, looked utterly overwhelmed. He knew this wasn't just a small-town crime anymore. The chilling precision of the letter, the meticulous way David's death tied into its threat, spoke of an intelligence far more sinister than a disgruntled vocal. The Whisperer wasn't just exposing secrets, it was acting on them, and Havenwood was now trapped in a deadly game with a killer no one could see. The town held its breath, knowing that David Miller's death was not an end, but a terrifying, bloody escalation. Coach Miller's death was a seismic shock to Havenwood. The anonymous letters had been terrifying, but abstract. Now the terror had a face, a brutal, undeniable reality. Chief Thompson, under immense pressure, knew he had to find a culprit, and fast. The town was a powder keg, ready to explode with fear and suspicion. The investigation, initially frantic and unfocused, soon narrowed. The police, desperate for a lead, quickly zeroed in on Silas Croft. Silas was the town's eccentric recluse, a grizzled old man who lived in a ramshackle cabin on the outskirts of town, notorious for his antisocial behavior and his bitter feuds with several town council members, including Coach Miller. He was a known hoarder of old newspapers and was often seen rummaging through discarded mail. It was a classic loner profile, and the town, desperate for answers, readily embraced it. Circumstantial evidence mounted quickly. Silas had a history of writing angry, albeit coherent, letters to the local paper, complaining about perceived injustices. A search of his cabin revealed stacks of old newspapers, some with words crudely cut out. More damning, a tattered, almost ceremonial-looking knife with traces of mud and a faint, acrid smell, similar to what was reported near Miller's body, was found hidden in his shed. The police leaned heavily on Silas. After hours of intense interrogation, fueled by exhaustion and perhaps a desperate hope for a return to normalcy, Silas Croft finally confessed. He admitted to writing some of the anonymous letters, claiming he was simply trying to expose the hypocrisy and rot he saw festering beneath Havenwood's perfect exterior. He railed against the town's elite, accusing them of corruption and deceit. But when pressed about Coach Miller's death, Silas vehemently denied it. "I wanted to expose him, yes, but I didn't push him. Something else did. Something from the woods. Something that watches." His wild claims were dismissed as the ravings of a guilty man. Silas Croft's arrest brought a palpable, though temporary, sigh of relief to Havenwood. The news spread like wildfire. The Whisperer had been caught. The terror was over. The town could finally heal. But for a few, including a sharp, cynical young journalist named Cassidy Thorne from the Havenwood Weekly, a chilling doubt lingered. Cassidy had been covering the letter saga from the beginning, initially captivated by the true crime aspect. She'd interviewed many of the victims, and something about Silas's confession didn't quite fit. She remembered Dr. Sharma's almost prophetic fear and the unsettling precision of the letters. Silas, for all his eccentricities, seemed too disorganized, too crude for such calculated malice. Her doubts solidified when a new anonymous letter, identical in style and chilling in content, arrived at Chief Thompson's desk 2 days after Silas Croft was incarcerated. This letter revealed a deeply personal, embarrassing secret about Chief Thompson himself, a secret only a handful of people knew, and one that Silas Croft, locked away, couldn't possibly have discovered. The message was clear. The whisperer was still at large. Cassidy delved deeper. She revisited the Coach Miller crime scene, poring over forensic reports that Chief Thompson had marked inconclusive. While the police focused on Silas, Cassidy noticed a detail overlooked by official investigators. Etched into the base of a weather-beaten pine tree near the overlooked cliff edge, almost hidden by moss, was a faint yet unmistakable symbol. It was a series of interlocking, irregular lines, almost identical to the cryptic carving Sarah Jenkins had found on that old hiking axe in the distant Blackwood Pass case. A chilling coincidence, or something more? This wasn't just about a disgruntled local anymore. The methodical precision of the letters, the knowledge of secrets no human could possibly know, and now, a symbol found at a murder scene that hinted at something ancient and profound, spoke of a terror far beyond a single, isolated individual. The hunt for the Whisperer had only just begun, and the real killer, the true ghost of Havenwood, was still out there, watching, waiting, and perhaps preparing for its next move. And Cassidy Thorne, now privy to its chilling continued existence, felt a cold dread settle deep in her bones. Okay, this is it. Chapter 5 will tie up the loose ends while leaving a chilling, open-ended mystery, fully embracing the strange, dark, and mysterious ethos of Miss Abalin. Will ensure the logical flow from previous chapters and deliver a compelling conclusion. Silas Croft's confession was supposed to bring peace to Havenwood. It didn't. The new letter that arrived at Chief Thompson's desk, exposing his own secret long after Silas was locked away, was undeniable proof. The Whisperer was still out there. Panic, momentarily quelled, now surged with a new, terrifying intensity. They had caught a scapegoat, not the true tormentor. Cassidy Thorne, the young journalist, felt a cold vindication mixed with a profound dread. Her investigation intensified. She pored over local archives, old town records, and forgotten folk tales. She found repeated references to the symbols she'd seen at Miller's Peak, the same interlocking, irregular lines Sarah Jenkins had found on that ancient axe in the distant Blackwood Pass case. This wasn't just a random act of a disgruntled local. This was something older, something deeply rooted in Havenwood's dark past. Her research led her to a long-forgotten piece of Havenwood history, a disgraced family from the town's founding, accused of unspeakable rituals and driven out centuries ago. Their sprawling, overgrown estate deep in the Whispering Woods just outside town was rumored to be cursed, a place where secrets found their voice. It was a place no one dared to visit. Cassidy, driven by a journalistic hunger and a growing irrational fear, ventured there. The air grew heavy, the forest unnaturally silent. She found the ruins of an old manor, choked by vines, and beneath its crumbling foundation, an ancient, moss-covered stone altar. Etched deeply into the altar, glowing faintly with an unnatural phosphorescence, were the very same symbols she'd seen. And then she saw it. Not a person, but a shimmer in the air, a distortion in the shadows, accompanied by that faint, acrid smell they detected in Chapter 2. It wasn't human. It was an entity, a malevolent presence, feeding on the fear, the paranoia, and the unearthed secrets of Havenwood. The letters hadn't just exposed secrets, they had been offerings. The official investigation into Coach Miller's death ultimately stalled. Silas Croft was released from jail months later, the lack of conclusive evidence, and the undeniable proof of the post-arrest letter, leaving Chief Thompson utterly humiliated. No public explanation was given. The town was left to grapple with the terrifying truth. The killer, the true Whisperer, was never caught. The case was quietly closed, labeled an unexplained fatality, adding Havenwood to the growing list of America's unsolved mysteries. Havenwood was never the same. The idyllic facade was shattered, replaced by a pervasive atmosphere of mistrust. Neighbors continued to eye each other with suspicion, forever wondering if their darkest secrets would be the next ones exposed, if they would be the next target. The town became a monument to paranoia, a chilling testament to what happens when hidden truths fester and an unseen force decides to play judge, jury, and executioner. Cassidy Thorne, haunted by what she discovered in the Whispering Woods, left Havenwood shortly after, her career irrevocably altered. She published a series of articles about the case, hinting at the supernatural elements, but no one truly believed her. Most dismissed it as sensationalism. But sometimes, late at night, a fresh, meticulously crafted letter, identical in style to those that terrorized Havenwood, would appear on a prominent desk in a quiet, unsuspecting town hundreds of miles away. It would expose a dark secret, a long-buried sin. And as the terror began to spread, the residents would wonder, who is sending these? Where do they get their information? And what truly wants to expose the darkest corners of the human soul? The Whisperer of Havenwood, it seems, was not confined by town limits, or even by conventional understanding. It was a terrifying force, an unseen hand, eternally searching for secrets, forever feeding on the fear they produced, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and unanswered questions. And somewhere out there, in the quiet corners of America, it's still whispering.